Hi, I'm Rodney Cox. I am one of your police officers. I'm actually a criminal investigator, a detective for the Aransas County Sheriff's Office.
Coach Blue, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Elvira Blue Roberts. I coached at high school and the middle school. I've been here for 16 years. I coach cross country, track, both high school and middle school.
Okay.
Could y'all please describe y'all's heritage?
I consider myself a Black American.
Okay. Coach Blue?
Okay, well, I'm also a Black American, and yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Just not to get complicated, I'm sure Coach Blue as well, we're a melting pot. There are a lot of differences that we have. My last name, Cox, is not an African name. So I have more, that's off in my lineage, but I consider myself a Black American. Because I was born here, my mother was born here, my grandmother was born here, my great-grandmother, my great-great-grandmother, and so on were born here in America.
Well, with Roberts is my married name, and Blue actually was a slave. So whenever when the slaves came over, they kind of took that's how they kind of how dark their skin was. So whenever my great down the line, they said, well, he looked blue, which is kind of sad, so he was a darker skin. So my last name was a slave by the color of their skin.
Very interesting. Go ahead.
Why is Black History Month so important?
I believe it's important because a lot of hidden treasures are within the Black culture and the Black community. There are a lot of inventions and inventors that were Black that do not get credit. You might learn about George Washington Carver, the gin and making peanut butter and what he did with peanuts, but you also have some that have done blood transfusions. What firefighters use today and underwater divers use, your breathing apparatus. A Black man invented that to rescue coal miners. So there are a lot of things that are there that the heritage and things in the Black community is really important for us nowadays. Your telephones. That's a little study question for you guys to sit there to do to find out who did that, where the technology came from.
Coach Blue, why is Black History Month so important?
Just to see, other than that we were, just to get to see what other African Americans did.
What is a heritage tradition you wish to pass down that your parents have passed down to you?
One and foremost was reading the Bible. When I say my grandmother, before the virus came about, was in church, if the church doors were open, she was in church. Whether it was Sunday, Saturday, she was in church the entire week. That was first and foremost, and love one another. I think that's the biggest thing, because with the Bible, love yourself as you love your neighbor. We had to love one another, and that was it, because your family is definitely there. And the other is music, which if we get to talk about a little bit more in your question and answers, I will explain it with music on how it's important in my family and in the Black culture.
What tradition do you want to pass down that your parents passed down to you?
Love, family, love and family. Family is everything, Dad. So that's what they have brought to me, and that's keep my family close to me.
Okay, what is something you would like to say to all the students and staff at Fulton Learning Center about the importance of embracing diversity, such as the Black community, along with other different cultures?
Without one, you cannot have the other. Without the other, you will not have success. And that's very important. Just because someone looks different doesn't mean that they're lesser than what you are. They're of value and they are important. You can learn from anyone and everyone.
What is something you would like to say to all the students and staff at Fulton Learning Center about the importance of embracing diversity, such as Black community, along with other different cultures?
We're all different. We're all different, but we're all the same at the same time. So embrace it, love it, love it.
Okay. We're going to do Q&A with the students, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Any questions from our students? Chevy?
I was gonna say the music.
About the music, I'm glad that was intrigued you to ask the question about the music. For slavery's Underground Railroad, there were songs that were sung, but to the slave owners, they thought they were church music, but they were hymns or songs giving messages. Wade in the Water was telling the slaves how to escape. And that's what rap music pretty much is. It's a story. A lot of it is fabricated, but it tells you what's going on in the communities. And people like me who listen to rap and somewhat understand it, it helps make my job easier if I want to catch someone, because I can decipher what's said. Plus, my brothers do music as well. That's what the music was important to us, to tell your story and to be able to sing a song.
How many times do you go to church a week?
For me or for Coach? For Coach. Every morning I wake up, and usually around 4:30 in the morning, I'm watching church on TV. And if more than two are gathered, you're in church, so I classify that as church. So every morning I try to at least get something from the Bible.
Coach, how often do you go to church, and is it important in your life?
We only go on Sundays.
Have you ever been scared of crime investigating?
Of what?
Have you ever been scared of crime investigating?
I'm scared of making a mistake, yes. But as far as doing an investigation, no. Now, is it pretty nasty sometimes? Yes.
Serenity.
How was your childhood different than mine?
That's an excellent question. I'm not sure how you grew up, but where I grew up in a small town called Cuero, Texas, we were pretty much, in the time that I grew up, we were on a certain side of the tracks, railroad tracks. That was the dividing portion. It's the south side of Cuero. And when it became dark, we had to be on the south side of the railroad tracks. We could not be in a good, prominent neighborhood that was predominantly white. We pretty much grew up with what was in my neighborhood to another neighborhood that was to the southeast of Cuero, where the dynamics of my neighborhood were Black and Hispanic. To this day, my best friend's parents, I can go to their house and eat just like I never left from right next door to them. That's how close we are, and they are Hispanic. They're just like my grandmother. I think that might be the difference. I really had a boundary, the railroad tracks. And what was said to my elders weren't necessarily said to me, and it was pretty harsh about your skin tone. Don't let us catch you on this side of the tracks after dark.
Coach, one of the students asked, how was your childhood different than theirs?
My father was a shrimper. So, and that was correct here. So it's probably not different than they are. Because my mom was a stay-at-home mom, my dad was a shrimper, my parents divorced when I was 6, so I lived in a single-family household. So my mother had to provide once the divorce was final, and then she became a welder. So that's the difference there. And my mother was a strict mother, where when we would go outside, she had to know where we were. We couldn't go down past 2 houses. We went down 2 houses. We probably would have got spanked. So, yeah, and I could do sleepovers at a certain age. So I finally had a sleepover when I was 16. So my mom had to know where we were at all times.
And if I may continue with that, we could stay with our cousins. I did not stay with a friend of mine until we moved to Victoria, and it was my junior year in high school before I stayed with someone other than family. My father, he was killed when I was 1, so my mom was all that I had. She was very strict. She was 5'1", maybe 100 pounds, but she ruled with an iron fist. If I did something wrong, she had so much authority, I had so much respect for her that she literally would say, go get the belt, bring it back so I could whip you. No questions asked. And I learned very quick. A hard head makes a soft behind. I learned what that meant. I stayed out of trouble, so I would not get a spanking.
What does Black History Month mean for both of you?
What was what?
What does Black History Month mean for both of you?
I think it's a makeup for all of the neglect that has gone on, that recognition wasn't given, because it was so hard. My grandmother's great-great-grandmother, my grandmother, she'll be 95. Her great-great-grandmother was a slave. And for them to have to grow up and finally learn how to read and do things that should have been legal. I remember her telling me about the poll tax, P-O-L-L tax, that she had to pay, or her and my granddad had to pay in order to vote. I think it's something that's needed, but it's just being kind of made up to finally give the recognition, because there was great people that were inventors, they were smart, they were educated, they did a whole lot. They even fought in the Civil War, of value to the country that was never getting. It's about time. But it's not only for the Black community, it should be for every ethnic background and every race, which we only say Black or African American here. Over in Africa, you're part of a tribe. You're either from from Congo, or you're from somewhere they do not recognize people by the color of skin. That's an American thing.
Coach, student asked, what does Black History Month mean to you?
It means we can look at what other African Americans or Black Americans have done for us, that's in a positive way, because we're not all negative. I think what social media has done has always put us in a negative outlook, and this is a way to say, hey, there's positive going on that we're doing.
Okay. Thank you.
No.
In history, long time ago, in your history behind you, were Black males and Black females, were they allowed to be reading when they were slaves?
When they were slaves, no, they were not.
So it was illegal to be reading or
If you were caught, yes, correct. We were not to read. Now, I know my mother, there was another school there in Cuero called Dole. That was the all-black school when they were desegregated and they were going to Cuero High. The books that were given, pages were torn out and nasty messages were written in those books. My grandmother has that stuff and things, so they did not want even, my mom, maybe in the 50s and the 60s going to school, didn't want blacks to read or to learn. It wasn't necessarily against the law like it used to be back in the slavery days.
Coach, do you happen to know anyone back in history that was not allowed to read? Do you have any family members, or do you know of anyone that didn't allow to read? Because of the time.
I wouldn't say wasn't allowed to, but I guess it was a struggle for her. And it was my mother. She dropped out of school when she was in 9th grade. So she kind of struggled in this, where they didn't pinpoint. Later on, we found out she was dyslexic, but they couldn't pinpoint that she was dyslexic. So she kind of struggled with reading out. So I would have to read to her when I was younger. But I don't. My grandmother, she really didn't talk about it. So it would be one with my mother. They didn't pinpoint that she was dyslexic back then.
Have you ever chased somebody that's going fast, stuff like that?
In a car or on foot? I will answer both. 23 years ago, when I started my law enforcement career, I would give you 100 yards and a head start to outrun me. If you could outrun me, I will let you go. No one ever did that. That's how fast I used to be. My very first pursuit, high-speed pursuit, I was working in Refugio. It was Thanksgiving Eve, bumper-to-bumper traffic, and the car that I was trying to catch up to was probably doing about 150 miles an hour. It was flying. But I caught some of the people. They had undocumented people in there. But yes, I've been in both, foot and vehicle pursuits. I've caught some of them. We didn't catch the driver.
So the driver's still out there.
Yes.
Have you ever been hit for no reason?
I've never been hit for no reason, but once upon a time, I was profiled against, and it was the color of skin, and sadly it was by a police officer who I still know to this day. I was in the mall. I was wearing Raiders in my family, the Oakland, Los Angeles, now the Las Vegas Raiders. They mean a lot to my family for different things. That's discussion for a different day. So I was wearing my Raiders gear. Had my cap turned on backwards. And there were some white kids in front of me. They were probably about the same age as I, who had their caps turned around backwards. The officer came to me and said, "Boy, turn your cap around." At this time, I was an elite athlete. I wasn't going to tolerate, and I challenged that officer as to why you feel you can call me boy and ask me to turn my cap around when you didn't ask these other people. As he stepped towards me and I realized what was about to happen, my cousin, who was, we used to call him LCB, but they're Texas Alcohol Beverage Commission. He was a police officer, walked up and said, "Rodney, what are you doing?" And that officer backed off at that point, realizing and finding out later that he was my cousin and he witnessed everything and he wasn't going to allow the bullying to go on. But he picked on me because I was black, not someone else who was right in front of me doing the same thing. We were both in the wrong.
Coach, have you ever been bullied because of your skin color?
That she would go, I think she went in the house to get a doll, and I was waiting for her outside. Her dad came out, and he was yelling, "Get out," the N-word, "Get out of here, get out of here." And I looked at him and I was like, what is going on? So I went back home. And I said, "Mom, this man was yelling at me," and I said the word. And she's like, baby, don't go back to that house and stay grand. That was the end of that. I was 6 years old. I was 6. Another time was I was 17 years old, and it was a group of friends that just got my Ford Pro car, and it was me, my sister, and 2 other of my friends who were also black. And we were just riding around town. And we also had another group of cars calling us by our names, but the N-word again. And so that was 2 incidents that I remember very.
What type of college did you go to, Mr. Goff?
I went to a historical black university first, Texas Southern University in Houston, Texas, and then I transferred to University of Houston in Houston.
Coach, what college did you go to?
My first one went to Sam Houston State in Huntsville, and then I graduated from Texas A&M in corporate.
Gavin. Did something fail to you, and were you mistreated because of your skin tone?
Yes, I've been mistreated because of my.
Was there something fail that happened to you, and you weren't treated because of your skin tone?
Say that again, the first portion?
Did you get,
Did something fatal happen to you, and were you mistreated because of your skin tone?
Well, not fatal because I'm still alive. I've had opportunities. Believe it or not, I went to college for business and accounting, but I'm a police officer. I had a job interview. It wasn't given to me because of my skin color. Sadly, I've had an incident here where a white lady pulled up on one of my traffic stops because if I'm doing undercover operations, I may not dress as you see me now, but I'm not dressed like your typical police officer because this is my everyday uniform, minus my little neck covering and things here. This is how I'm dressed. But the lady decided to pull up and have the nerve to ask if I am really who I am pretending to be. So why else would I be in a car with red and blue lights, pulling someone over, talking on the police radio to sit there and do that? I told Sheriff Mills, your sheriff, he had to talk with those people because I provided him the license plate. He knew who they were, and he was in tears for something like that happening. I've been questioned because I walk in Walmart or whichever. Whenever you see me, even if you cannot see, I am always armed. I always have a gun on me. That's part of our policies. I'm subject to call out all the time. So if I'm cutting my grass, I have a gun on me. But I walk through the store and I've had people question, even though the law was at the time, you could conceal carry and then you could open carry. Why would you ask me and not ask the guy that's in the aisle right beside me bending over, not protecting his gun? But ask me, why am I carrying? What authority do I have to carry a gun? Never mind, I'm right-handed and my badge is in front of the gun, so you'll see that I'm a police officer. They still ask me. So nothing fatal that has killed me, but I get discriminated against and picked out or singled out.
We could take a couple more. We have.
I'm having fun.
Time,
I sure do. I make time for my kids.
Charlie.
What couldn't y'all do back in the days?
Initially growing up, I remember certain places in Cuero where I had to go to the back. I could not go to the front of a business. Certain water fountains, crossing the railroad tracks, and going to a white kid's house. That was something when we moved to Victoria, and it was my quarterback whose house I went to first, and then one of my linemen. They didn't live too far away from the high school or from one another. That was something that it was frowned upon.
Coach,
Hey guys, I just wanted to say to you about what
was
Officer
there
Cox just said.
something growing up you
That was
could not
after
do?
immigration. That was all after the civil rights movement
Yeah, this was in the 1980s.
that happened.
Was there something growing up that you were not allowed to do?
No, I could do, yeah, no, I could do whatever I needed to do. I know, but whenever in middle school, my mom wouldn't allow me to do sports. She thought I was gonna hurt myself, which she didn't like, so I did hurt myself in junior year of high school. But high school, you know, she finally said, okay, you try this sport, go ahead, and then, yeah, it wouldn't, but, yeah, middle school, on it.
We're gonna go to 10, just allow one more question since Coach is busy, so we'll let it go already. All right.
Was it only black skin tones, or was it, like kind of like Hispanic?
Good questions.
It was both, black and Hispanic.
Coach, did you witness, black and Hispanic skin tones being discriminated against?
Yes, I would, no, in school I would see it sometimes, some of the teachers, and then, with my own mother, we would go to certain school works, but, yeah. Getting better.
Do you want to say?
Coach Fu, thank you so much for joining us. I know you're very busy. We're gonna go ahead and let you go since you are still working. And we appreciate
Thank you.
An applause.
Brandon!